Today on Building the Broncos, Carl and Nick discuss the players they believe can and must take that next step in their game this season for the Broncos to turn things around in 2018 and beyond. This is Building the Broncos.
Broncos country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I am your host, Carl Dumler, and with me as always, I have my co-host and good friend, Nick Kendell. Nick, how are you doing, man?
I am doing pretty well. The weather has actually been gorgeous this week. I had a good weekend, drove up about an hour and a half north to one of the best disc golf courses in Iowa this weekend, and babysat girlfriend's mom's dog, which was fun. He came with. He was a pretty good boy. So can't complain, and OTAs are rolling around. Work's been busy but good, so got no real complaints.
That's good, man. If I could get you to take out one word, the disc word.
Oh, man.
And then you and I could hit up the links together and get in some golf. No, that's my week. I'm hoping to get in a few rounds this week before I have my first tournament. So it's been fun getting out in the heat again and swinging a golf club and actually feeling like I know what I'm doing again. It's been a while since I've felt that with a golf club, but that's my one joy of the summer of waiting for the NFL to kick off again in the fall is I get a few rounds of golf in.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me between disc golf and regular golf is price. Like it costs a lot, obviously, to go on the course and the clubs and everything. Where disc golf, it's mostly just the discs. And then the other thing is I love being in the woods. I love being around trees, and that's not a golfer's best friend. Not really a disc's best friend either, but the way they make them, the courses, you can actually like be in the middle of a forest or woods or anything, and that's my happy place.
Yeah, I bought a membership this year. I'm not going to tell my wife exactly what I spent on it.
Can you put a price on happiness?
She might.
Okay, that's fair enough.
But not me.
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, I want you to let you know that the Building the Broncos focus is all things that pertain to your Denver Broncos as it relates to the upcoming season and OTAs and training camp, everything. With Nick and myself being just building the Broncos aholics, we'll be bringing you fresh insight and analysis each and every week in every single episode, from scouting reports, player value, scheme, personnel fits, and just some general football banter. You can follow myself on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH, as well as follow Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. And be sure to tweet us any questions or opinions you have, because we live for talking Bronco football. And you can also follow the podcast Twitter account at HuddleUpPod. Make sure you check out ours and our co-writers' written content at milehighhuddle.com, a part of 24/7 Sports, an affiliate of the CBS Sports Digital Network. We know you listeners are as football draft and Bronco crazy as we are, so please give us a click and subscribe to us on iTunes as well as Stitcher. And don't forget to share us on Facebook and Twitter. We wouldn't be here today without you listeners. So as a call to action, please go and take the time to go to iTunes or Spreaker and rate and subscribe to let your voices be heard on how you enjoy our show. Now, before we get into everything for today, we want to take a second to say thank you to our great sponsor, Audible. You can get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/huddleup. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle. Again, that's www.audibletrial.com/huddleup. I would highly recommend this. I have a big trip coming up here in a couple weeks to Haiti, and I know I'm gonna have a lot of hours in the air, a lot of hours in an airport. So Audible's definitely going to be one of my best friends. After, of course, the Huddle Up podcast, I'm going to be listening to all those, getting caught back up. But after that, Audible, I'm going to be listening to a lot of books, so I highly recommend it. Well, Nick, we're kind of making that transition today into all of our listeners to getting past the draft. We're putting the not the complete kibosh on the 2018 draft, but we're kind of moving forward to looking at the 2018 season and kind of looking at the entire roster now. I mean, we are building the Broncos. It's not just about the draft to build a team. It is about all the different avenues that you have. And today we thought it would be great to talk about some players that we think really need to step up. And these are players, not that we're not talking about the Case Keenums of, hey, we added this new quarterback, we need him to step up over what we had last year at quarterback. We're talking about the players that have maybe shown a little bit of promise, that have been on the roster. Maybe they haven't really shown anything, but they need to show something.
They use high capital to get them to the team.
Right, exactly. And so these are the players of what can we expect from them? Is another question that we're going to answer today, and just what it's going to take to get them to that next level. And probably one of the biggest players that still is going to be talked about, even though he's not going to be a starter this year. We're going to start with Paxton Lynch. And that name it causes me to cringe these days because of how much he hurt me. But there's still hope. There is still some hope for this guy. But just starting off, just to kind of give some of the basics for what has happened so far. We're just looking, first off, contract-wise. I've heard a lot of people talking about, why not just cut Paxton Lynch? Why not just move on from him if he's not going to be the starter? Well, a big part of that is his contract. He is making $2.6 million in cap hit this year. And of course, then after this year is when they're going to have to make their decision on the 5th-year option. Probably not going to do that. But at this point, he's only 24. And when he came into the league, everybody thought, hey, this guy is a 2 to 3 year project. Well, we are getting into year 3. And just looking back to last year, played 2 games, went 30 of 45. That's 66.7% completion percentage, which actually is pretty good, but only had 295 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and a quarterback rating of 72. So a couple flashes, couple things that look a little bit nice, other things that look not great at all. But I guess just looking at the past with Paxton, what for you, Nick, has been the biggest disappointment?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me with Paxton Lynch is that he was always considered a multi-year project. It was going to be year 2, year 3, year 4 when he finally showed, which probably meant he shouldn't have been a first-round pick anyway, but that's an entirely different argument. But the biggest thing for me is that he looked like a better quarterback at Memphis. Granted, obviously worse competition and whatnot, but he even just his regular overall play was better at Memphis than anything he showed so far at the NFL level. I would say that he, at least from what I've seen over the last 2 seasons, he's farther away from being a competent NFL starting quarterback today than he was when he was first drafted, which is just mind-blowing. I think a lot of that has to do with confidence. I think he's lost a lot of faith in himself. I don't think he is, from what I've heard and what I've seen, is that he's not super mentally tough, which is, again, that's another besides the point issue. But I don't know. There's hope there. But at the same time, I'm pretty confident that I'm going to end up winning our bet in the end that Paxton Lynch does not end up a long-term viable option for the Broncos at quarterback, which means beer for me and not for you, Carl.
I know. And for your girlfriend.
Yeah, that too. Yep.
Yeah, can't forget her. I agree. There's a very good chance of that. But this is where we get into, we also want to talk a little bit today about maybe some latest things that we're hearing around OTAs. And always take anything from OTAs with a grain of salt because it's OTAs.
A grain. Make it like a desert of salt.
Yes. You don't want to hear that things are going really bad for a player. I would be more inclined to listen to that than I would to them doing good.
Yeah.
When they're in shells like they are right now, I would expect a quarterback to be looking pretty good. Things are pretty simple. Things are set up for them to have success. Anyway, at camp so far, even the coaches, players, everybody that's been watching it that has pretty much said Paxton Lynch has actually looked really good. That he has had some very good moments. He still had a few of those moments of just not really seeing the defense well. But the thing beyond that really gives me just that glimmer of hope. That when you say that slim to none, that this is that slim part. I've been hearing that he has been arriving early to practice and leaving late. I've heard that the video games are not as big of a concern this year as they were last year. And I've heard that he has been really working to connect a lot more with teammates. All those are very good things that you want to hear. And I know some would say this is too little too late, but it's one of those things. Sometimes players, they just take a while to ever get it. For Paxton, I mean, this is a guy that is 6'7". He is an athletic freak. And for most of his life, he's just been able to live off that athleticism. I don't think he's had to work at what it takes to be a great quarterback. And I mean, that's why at Memphis, he could look really good because he was that much bigger, stronger, faster than all the guys around him. So maybe, just maybe, he's finally getting that you can't just go out there and just trust that your athleticism is going to get you the job, or that your first round pick gets you the job. I mean, losing 2 years in a row to Trevor Siemian, that should be a very humbling thing for any player. So like I said, there's some little things that give you a little bit of hope. But until we see him on the field with actual tacklers coming at him, defense is actually trying, we can't really read too much into what's going on right now with him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the biggest thing for Paxton Lynch is doing the consistent thing, the play-by-play. You know, we've talked about it in the draft podcast. Both of us have kind of evolved our evaluations from quarterbacks, and while the flash plays and everything like that are fun and nice, you know, it's good for a highlight video, I don't care if they're throwing it 80 yards down the field from their knees, underhand, you know, while, I don't know, singing the Hallelujah chorus. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you got to be able to do the consistent thing, game by game, play by play, snap by snap, etc. And just Paxton Lynch has been so far from that. You'll see some flashes. I mean, we've talked about it. He had that throw his rookie season against Tampa Bay, which was one of the best throws the Broncos quarterbacks have made as far as an arm talent, putting it to a spot. I think it was like a 15-yard out that I'd seen from a quarterback. I mean, Peyton Manning wouldn't have made that throw because he just didn't have that arm strength. That wasn't really Peyton's game. But that doesn't matter if you can't do the small things consistently. And just Paxton has not been able to do that. And so going through progressions, having to go in and put in the work. I mean, as fun as Fortnite is, sorry, you PUBG listeners, Fortnite's better than PUBG. Are you PUBG fans? Khalid's going to delete the podcast after this. But yeah, it's just doing the little things consistently and knowing that it's beyond just showing up. You have to come in and be a leader, put in the work, and be the guy. You know, it's not going to be handed to you. I don't care you're a first round pick. I don't care you're a quarterback. And it's crazy. This year, it's weird because I feel like there's less pressure on Paxton in a sense that because we have Case Keenum, we know that he doesn't have to start. But at the same time, things are less guaranteed for him than ever before. That first round draft pick status is really starting to rust up a little bit. And you got Chad Kelly behind him and Case Keenum in front of him. I mean, Broncos didn't go quarterback early this year in the draft. They didn't go quarterback at all in the draft. So that's I guess a small endorsement for Paxton Lynch. But what he does this year probably will have as big of an impact on the rest of his career as an NFL quarterback as any year he's had so far. So big year for Paxton. And if he does step up, it's going to have big ramifications, positive ramifications for the Broncos, not just 2018, well, specifically not 2018, but beyond, because it could really just change the course of what the Broncos can do on that side of the football in the draft, team building, and everything going forward.
Exactly. I mean, every Bronco fan out there should be cheering either for Paxton Lynch, Case Keenum, or Chad Kelly, one of the three, to become the Broncos at quarterback. And so, yeah, you need to hear that he's doing good things, that he can win this backup position against Chad Kelly. He can't let a 7th-round quarterback beat you again. If that happens, he's gone after this year. Yeah. I just can't see how they can keep – I mean, other than he's halfway cheap. But even there, he's not the cheapest quarterback. You can go draft another quarterback. If Chad Kelly's been is going to move to your backup role, you can go get a guy that's a quarter of the price and still feel okay with it.
Yeah, and at that point, it's about a locker room change, not only for the Broncos, but for Paxton Lynch. I mean, if the 3 years in a row and it's just been putrid and garbage and everything that it's been so far, granted injuries and the offensive system around him haven't been great, but I mean, we've said it on this podcast before. He's as much at fault as the team. Team definitely deserve his blame as well, but it's make or break time for Paxton Lynch. But if he does take that next step, you know, being able to go through progressions, being able to do the little things, it could mean so much for the Broncos because it gives them an option behind. And you're safer behind Case Keenum because if he gets hurt, I mean, right now it's hair on fire, we're screwed kind of stuff going on if Case Keenum gets hurt. But if he steps up and takes that next step and starts to show, you know, really show that he can do those things and show off those natural tools and just go out there and play football. I mean, when he's out there not thinking too much, he can do things, but it's not natural to him right now. So we'll see. But what do you expect is going to happen? We're going to put on the Miss Cleo hat right now. We're going to get the what is it? The seeing eyeball? I don't even know what it's called. They put their hands on the ball, talking to the dead. Whatever that is. It's looking to the future. What do you expect this season? OTAs, training camp, and overall this season. Is he going to take that step, or is he going to tread water and keep trending towards that bust status he's been at?
With hearing that he is spending more time at the facility, that he is working harder than in years past, and maybe this is going to be the biggest part of this equation for him, knowing that this is a much more simple language offense. I think that's big for all the quarterbacks. It bothers me how much offensive coordinators just expect these quarterbacks to know these 15 to 20 word calls. And it's not even just the quarterback, it's the entire offense to have to know. I mean, I know that they only have to listen to one part of it if you're not a quarterback, but I just feel like you're setting them up for failure if you're going to have that kind of language. Because college doesn't have that. A lot of them have those boards on the side with 4 pictures and hey, one of these pictures means something to you. So a simplified language for the offense. That doesn't mean a simplified offense. That just means a simple way to remember it of, hey, 1 to 2 words, and we know what play we're going with. That's, I think, big for him. So I do expect a little bit better. I feel like he's going to come out and know the offense a lot more, feel a lot more confident. And like you said, taking that pressure off, I think that quarterback battle last year was not good for the team at all, for Simeon or for Paxton, because it was Simeon won by default. It wasn't that Simeon went out and won it. It was both looked really bad, but the coaches had to pick somebody.
It's even worse because they tried to give it to Paxton.
Right, exactly.
They like, please take this. Please, God, take this. We do not want Simeon. We need to see what you have. And he lost again. Right.
And so, yeah, I do think pressure got to him. And maybe the Broncos, that's maybe a big thing they're having to learn is, how do we talk to Paxton? Maybe they're learning that they can't talk to Paxton the same way that they did to Peyton Manning or even Trevor Siemian to get him motivated. I don't know. That's just something. Every person is different. What motivates you compared to what motivates me is very different, I'm sure.
Meat and beer.
Oh, man. Okay, we are pretty close.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm a meat guy. Beer, I'm not quite the connoisseur that you are out there in Iowa. As Hicks in Kansas, we like our Coors Light and Bud Light.
Oh, that's not even that trash. Iowa is like the number one consumer of Busch Light.
Oh, there you
Literally go to an Iowa tailgate, it's Busch Light everywhere. Boy. I mean, I'm a hipster bro beans kind of type where I want the IPAs. The more hops, the better. And if it's been soaked in that bourbon barrel, I'm all about it.
Oh, man. There you go. Okay. Well, I'm like I said.
You better win this bet because my beer taste is expensive.
Come on, Paxton. Don't let me down. But no, I do. I expect a little bit better from him this year compared to years past. Are you getting that same vibe, or are you opposite of that? I
don't think he's going to succeed. I'm a pessimist. What I've seen the last 2 seasons and everything like that, I think it's probably a safer bet to assume that things don't click. Could be wrong, but and also I just want to be a little bit contrarian and self-fulfilling prophecy because I want to win this darn bet. I'd rather lose it, but at the same time, I want to be able to rub it in your face.
Right.
So,
right. So
we'll see what happens. I think the biggest thing for him is just being comfortable, getting his confidence back, going out there, going through the progressions. I like that he's taking care of the football, but like we talked about, he was a guy where he'd do that, take 3 steps back, and then if he felt any pressure, whether it be ghosts or real, he would look to use his athleticism and take off. He needs to learn to be a pocket quarterback, and those tools are nice, but they can't be a get-out-of-jail-free card every time. He's not Michael Vick. He's not Cam Newton. He's got to be able to win with his arm more than he's shown, and with his head, quite frankly. And he just hasn't shown that so far. And I'm not at OTAs. We're both not at OTAs, so we can't say, exactly what's happening there. But preseason play and what he's shown on the field so far, it would be more faith-based to say that he's going to turn it around than evidence-based at this point.
So big question, yes or no? Does he win the backup role?
I think he does. But I think it's going to be more like Trevor Siemian versus Paxton Lynch last season for that kind of spot. It's not because he really goes out there and wows it, but he's still the first-round pick. Team wants to be right about that, and they have him for as much control as Chad Kelly
I just think that he's more likely to win it at this point than Chad Kelly is. But Chad Kelly is a complete unknown as far as an NFL player.
I'm with you. I agree. I think he's going to win it.
Yeah.
Well, then that takes us to the next guy that we wanted to talk about, and that is Chad Kelly. Essentially, I mean, this is an either or. Broncos either need Chad Kelly to go out there and wow people, or Paxton Lynch to go out there and wow people. They get one of those guys, it's really good for the team moving forward. But anyway, Chad Kelly, he is actually the cheaper option. His contract is $496,000 with very little dead money if he is cut. So if Chad Kelly becomes a starting quarterback, that is huge for roster building.
Oh, yeah. I mean think about what the Seahawks were able to do with Russell Wilson and the Cowboys with Dak, even to a greater extent, because those guys were fourth-round picks compared to the last pick in the entire draft.
Right, exactly. And he's 24 years old, 6'2", 200 and I think he's about 12 pounds actually right now. He has lost about 24 pounds. When I look at that 212 pounds for a quarterback, is that too light?
It's a little light, but I think it's right in there. 215 to 225 for a 6'2" quarterback. That sounds about right.
Okay, yeah. When I first saw that weight, I was like, oh man, he has really gone to the skinny side of things.
Yeah, 212. I mean, it is pretty light, but we'll see how he looks on the field because he definitely had a little bit of a dad bod going on at Ole Miss.
That's true. And I guess the smaller weight, the reason I kind of bring that up is just because he has been injured a lot in his college career. And obviously last year spent the whole year on IR. It'll be interesting once he takes those first few hits, how he responds to that. That'll be a big thing for him. But anyway, what we've heard lately on Chad Kelly, like I said, is that he has lost some weight. He is in some very, very good shape. He really got himself on a good diet. The Broncos have one of the better nutritional programs in the NFL, from what I understand. But obviously that doesn't always mean that it translates well to on the field. From what I understand, he has struggled so far in OTAs. And I guess, and understand, I'm saying this with I'm not there. This is secondhand kind of information. Hearsay.
It would be objected to in court. Sorry, Carl, I love you, but that's just how it is.
Anyway, some have started trying to connect some of the dots that after he was the lone quarterback at rookie minicamp, they brought in Nick Stevens. And some think that means he really struggled and the Broncos wanted to get some insurance or at least some competition to push him to say, hey, you don't have a roster spot yet. You need to understand that we can stick Nick Stevens on the practice squad, or even they could try to get Chad Kelly on the practice squad and only keep two quarterbacks. So right now, like I said, he has been struggling, but he's also been out of football since 2 Novembers ago?
Yeah, it's been a bit.
Right. And so you got to expect there's going to be some rust. He's not going to go out there in day one look like Peyton Manning. That's just not going to happen. And so I'm again, this is early on. Let's not read too much into this or anything like that. But if the struggles continue, there's a good chance that Chad Kelly could struggle to make this roster.
Yes.
I know as crazy as that sounds because this is his first year with the Broncos, but he's a 7th round pick.
The last 7th round pick.
Right. Yeah. Mr. Irrelevant. So, and I've heard some people say, oh, he was first round talent until he got hurt and because of his off the field stuff. Do you realize what some of the players have done off the field that still got them drafted early in the draft? I mean, yeah. I think look at our rivals in the Chiefs and Tyreek Hill. That guy did 10 times worse stuff off the field than whatever Chad Kelly did. And he still went, 5th round?
Yep. I mean, Joe Mixon.
Right, exactly. I mean, so I'm sorry. Teams did not view him as a first-round quarterback. He might have had some moments where he had some first-round potential. I know everybody points to his games against Alabama looking so good.
Ole Miss beat Alabama, not Chad Kelly. Let's just point that out there.
If you go watch those games and actually see Chad Kelly, there's like 5 or 6 passes that should have been picked off that his receivers came down with.
Yeah, Treadwell was great in those games.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, Treadwell was fun.
Yeah.
Tunsil as well. And Evan Ingram.
Right. So, I mean, he had a lot of talent around him for some of those games. But, I mean, I'm not trying to take anything away from Chad Kelly. It's just to remember there's a lot more that went into it with his play on the field of why he went 7th round than just his off-the-field questions dropping him that far. So it wouldn't be that crazy of an idea if he really struggles that the Broncos cut him. But
especially because they've only kept 2 quarterbacks active on the roster pretty often in the recent past, and he's practice squad eligible. So if he does struggle, there's no reason to think that he wouldn't end up on the practice squad.
Right, exactly. So now let's talk about what does he need to show in OTAs, minicamp, and training camp to make you think that maybe he can take that next step for the NFL? What's the big thing you need to see from him right off the bat?
Making smart. It's the same thing as Paxton Lynch and Case Keenum. It's running the offense successfully, letting the wow plays come outside of structure naturally, not trying to force that from happening. He could clean up his throwing mechanics too. And just going through his progressions, running the offense and being consistent. And that's something that I'm not super confident he will do. And from what I've heard in OTAs, you mentioned it already, he's been the quarterback besides Nick Stevens, which I don't have expectations for, but Chad Kelly, out of the 3 higher profile guys, he's been the one who's been struggling more. And that's has me to believe that the next step, while it's hypothetically out there, I don't know if we'll see him reach that this season.
Right. And I know a lot of people have high hopes for him, but he definitely has a long ways to go to prove anything that he can make it in the NFL. So I'm hopeful, but there's just so many things that he needs to show right now. I need to hear things like that he's doing well with the playbook. Like you said, smart decisions on the football field. I need to hear that he's good in the locker room, leadership wise. I mean, when you hear things of some of the things that he's done off the field, you kind of go, oh man, is this guy that great in the locker room? So there's a few things for him that definitely need to happen. And to follow that up then, what happens, do you think, if he does not take that next step? Do you really think the Broncos would just decide to go with 2 quarterbacks this year?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think they want to go with 2 quarterbacks from what I've heard from Eric. So if that's how it comes down, the only way I see them not carrying 2 quarterbacks is if both Paxton Lynch and Chad Kelly play very well. Specifically, if Chad Kelly also plays well, that they're afraid that he'd get coached off the practice squad. But I think preferably they'd keep 2 quarterbacks instead of 3.
Okay. Well, then, expectations for this upcoming year. Do you think he makes this roster?
I think he is on the practice squad, but not on the 53.
Follow-up question to that. Do you think he would get snatched up by another team?
It depends completely on how he plays in preseason.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you have to see it.
If he's terrible against third-string guys, obviously what team would want him. But
here's my question for you. Is he going to be the next champion, heralded third-string quarterback that fades into irrelevance before he can ever see the field? Because that tends to be something that some Bronco fans like to do. Cough, Sloter, cough, Brad Strader, cough, Bradley Van Pelt. I mean, it just goes on forever.
Yeah, I don't know. There's such a love affair with that third-string, 7th-round quarterback. I think he would show well in games because of the lower level of competition, because he's kind of got that gamer mentality. I do think he can show better in games than he can in practice at times. But I think he's still going to have his struggles to start off with, just because, again, when you haven't been hit in a year and a half, I'm trying to do my math here in my head. It's been longer than that even. There's something about those first few hits that I think he's going to struggle right out of the gate, especially in preseason. I just think he's maybe either going to be too amped up or too jittery with guys flying around him. But probably that 3rd, 4th preseason game, I could see him actually showing a little something. I don't know. People have such a love affair with him already. I think it's kind of the opposite of Paxton Lynch. Paxton Lynch could do everything right and people would still cuss his name. Chad Kelly could go out there and throw 4 interceptions and people would be like, he hasn't played in a while. It's just kind of one of those things. For some reason, the hope of the future makes people see things a little bit different, I guess. So That's my long answer, I guess, for that.
If the Broncos, again, one of these guys needs to take that next step for this team because there's a chance Case Keenum's only a 2-year guy. And if the Broncos are able to have one of these guys step up and show some potential that they could eventually be the starting quarterback, that would make a world of difference for this team going forward and for you listeners of this podcast. Because if not, you're going to hear me banging the table for a quarterback again next year. So that's on you listeners. No, I'm just that's on Chad Kelly and Paxton Lynch, actually. I'll actually probably be banging the table for defensive line. But, that's just because that's next year's class. So we'll see. But anyway, moving on, we got another offensive player here. Most of these guys will actually be on the offensive side of the ball in today's episode. But running back Devontae Booker, 26 years old, 5'11", 219 pounds, coming into the third year of his deal, 2 years left on his contract, with a cap hit of $700,000, a little bit over $700,000 against the books for 2018. Last year, he ran 79 times for 299 yards and 1 rushing touchdown, 3.8 yards per carry, which was mediocre. I mean, the yards per carry was okay, but again, injured and just got put behind C.J. Anderson again. It never really showed. However, he did flash in the run game. Unfortunately, for a penalty, the one against the Colts was called back, but 30 catches for 275 yards, and that was pretty exciting to see. That was probably one of the highlights of the season last year as far as a spectacular play.
Right.
But
when you can see an individual effort be the reason that you score a touchdown, it's kind of like when we were talking about C.J. Anderson leaving in some of our favorite plays and his one against the Raiders on third down where he made like 5 guys miss. Those are the plays you're just like, man, that extra effort, that extra ability made the difference. And yeah, like you said, it's just so sad that one got called back so it doesn't show up in the stat lines.
He started off OTAs this year as the number 1 running back, but he does have some competition. D'Angelo Henderson's had some first-team reps as well, and there's a lot of talk that Royce Freeman might end up being the guy for the Broncos as the main ball carrier this season. So this really is a put-up-or-shut-up season for Booker. They got rid of C.J. Anderson. They've always preached how confident they are in him. They got rid of Studesville, so they're saying like it's not really the player there, it's the coach. They've got to get a new coach in there, see if that does anything for Booker and those guys in there. But again, like Paxton Lynch, this is a put-up-or-shut-up season for Booker. Just a 4th-round pick, so not the super highest of investments, but they talk like they love this kid, and he played very well when he played at Utah. So I still have some hope for him, but the name of the episode, this is about taking the next step. On the offense, Devontae Booker absolutely has to take the next step, and he honestly, for the offensive side of the ball, might be the most important guy in taking the next step next year, if the offense is going to take a big step forward.
Yeah, you have to have one of these running backs emerge. One of the stats that I heard earlier this week that I thought was so telling of the Broncos offense last year was they were 12th in yards before contact for the running back. So I know everybody wants to bag on the offensive line for not being that great, but they were actually a good rushing offensive line. They would get some push. They would get some room for these running backs to go make plays. But when you are only averaging 3.8 yards per carry, that means you're not making guys miss. You're not out there doing what you need to do as a running back to be that true number 1. And so for Booker, my biggest thing for him is he has to learn to run with vision. He has some burst to his game. I remember his rookie year, there were times, I think it was that Chargers game, one of the first ones that he really emerged onto the scene. He all of a sudden had about 7 straight carries of like 7 or 8 yards because he was just hitting the hole so hard, so fast. And it was just like, oh, man, this guy, maybe he can really be that future. And then it seemed like once he took over as the starting running back, he just lost all ability he just started running right to where the hole was supposed to be. And it didn't matter if the hole was open or not. And as a running back, one of the best things you can have, I think, is vision. I think that's one of the biggest things. I think it's better than athleticism. I think it's better than the speed, power, whatever you want to say. If you have vision as a running back, you could make it in the NFL. Terrell Davis is a great example. He was not the fastest. He was not the strongest, but he had some of the best vision I've ever seen out of a running back. That guy knew where the hole was going to open before it ever opened. And it just obviously led to a Super Bowl. 2 Super Bowls, sorry. Oh, my goodness. I'm shorting the Broncos here.
Yeah.
But for me, yeah. But for me, yeah, Booker, that's the big thing I need to see from him this year. And part of it, I think, for him that has been part of the struggle is he has gone into camp both times for the last 2 years hurt. And camp is where you kind of start getting that that rhythm, that ability to work with your offensive line, the ability just to see a little bit more. It's a little bit slowed down, and so you just got a little bit more opportunity to just get into that rhythm instead of all of a sudden, oh, you're in week 6. Hey, jump in there. Let's see what you got. That doesn't really work well for a running back.
Yeah, not so much.
Right. So, I mean, that's my biggest thing for him this year is just stay healthy. I think if he can stay healthy, he can turn into something.
I agree. The biggest thing for me is obviously staying healthy. Number one, got to be availability is your best ability. But you hit the nail on the head. It's the vision. He was touted as a guy with vision at Utah. I didn't always see that being the case, but that was something coming in. That, he's got a great feel for the line of scrimmage and vision. And so far, he's been a guy that doesn't really have a feel for the line. The blocking, he'll kick things outside when he shouldn't, run into the back of a guy. Granted, C.J. Anderson had some issues with this too, but C.J. Anderson kind of had a pace to his running where the offensive line could kind of flow, and then he'd kind of squirt through a little bowling ball through the line of scrimmage. You just haven't seen that with Booker. He hasn't been as strong punching through the offensive line, which power run game, gap scheme, that's what he's going to need to show. So it's definitely put up or shut up time for him. And just staying healthy. You hit it. So it's big. A lot of reps are going to help staying on the field and having a season where he's going into this year as the number one on the depth chart. So I think he can do it. And one thing that I really like about him that I don't think he didn't really get to show it off in college as much, but his 3-down ability. Some of his catches last year and his ability to line up even like slot, like they motion him out there, that's a way the NFL is trending. And you got these guys as mismatch weapons against linebackers and safeties in space. And if you're not getting them in space in the run game, you can kind of do that with the pass game. And Patriots have shown how effective that can be. So Booker's ability as a route runner, a 3-down back, can really help him elevate his game and make him more valuable. But if he's not running consistently between the tackles with vision and staying healthy, he's just going to be a limited role player and probably one of the lesser used guys in a running back by committee for the Broncos this season.
Right. I agree. I mean, this is definitely a very big make or break year for him. If he doesn't do anything, I mean, he's going to be off the roster after this year. And like you said, he'll have a very limited role if he is on this team and he can't show that next step. Because, I mean, when you go use a third-round pick on Freeman.
He's an early third-round pick.
Right, early third-round pick. And then, of course, you have Henderson from last year that showed a little bit of flashes at the end of the year. He could very quickly be out of a job here. I don't know. Like you said, the coaches always seem to love this guy. So I think that usually means he's a hard worker. I think when he's there with the team and not hurt, I think he has shown the coaches that he's going to put in the time and energy to be a good running back. So that's usually a pretty good sign when the coaches love a player. I mean, sometimes they hold on to guys that are not really worth it, but we'll just have to see on some of that with him. But I think this is going to be the competition of camp. Who wins that starting running back position?
Everybody. Running back by committee. Probably what happens.
And maybe that is the next question here. What are your expectations then for the running back group or just for Booker alone?
I see Booker getting probably 15 touches to 20 touches a game, probably closer to 15. Okay.
My expectation, honestly, is actually that Freeman's going to win the starting role. And I think that Booker will be the backup. And so he will get his opportunities. I think he will be that third down running back that'll come in and be that receiving threat. I think he's a decent blocker as well. I mean, that's my one big thing with Freeman is what is he going to look like as a blocker his rookie year? And I just think he and Henderson are going to be fighting for those extra snaps. I like Freeman. I like what he fits for. I like how he fits into this offense, I guess is the best thing. And I like that I've heard that Freeman has lost a little bit of weight to try to get back some of his explosiveness from his sophomore year. And I watched a lot of Freeman over the last couple of weeks because I was writing an article on him. And I just, like I said, I just think there's some very good promise there.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, we better kick this into high gear because we still got some guys to talk about, and we were only 3 in. So moving on, we have Garrett Bolles. He has a contract this season, a cap hit of $2.5 million with a $9 million dead cap hit. And he has 4 years left if you consider that 5th-year option, but 3 years without it. And is 26 years old. 6'5", 297 pounds. So big boy could probably. I mean, honestly, I don't know if he's 297 anymore. I'd be curious to see the updated weight listed for him because I'm hoping he's a little bit heavier than that these days. Last year, he played 98% of all offensive snaps and 12% of snaps in special teams, which is pretty darn surprising. I mean, I remember what game was it last year where we thought he was pretty much done for the year? Was it the Cowboys?
I think you're right.
I think it was the Cowboys game because then, he's probably going to be out for a bit, and then he ended up playing the next week at Buffalo.
That's right,
sure.
yeah.
Pretty sure. So pretty surprising for him. That's big for him, and he went between 300 pounds and 290 pounds last season. Hopefully we can get him up to about 315. That's where I'd like to see him at, given his frame. And he has been working on his technique with offensive tackle-specific coach Chris Strausser. We brought in Sean Kugler. The Broncos brought in Sean Kugler, but he's going to be the interior offensive line coach this season. So Chris Strausser working with the offensive tackles. And the next step for him, honestly, it's weight training. Got to get that consistency and that weight, get stronger because sometimes he didn't show the best anchor and he didn't sustain blocks as well as you'd want, both going back to strength in the weight room, transitioning to on the field. But also the biggest thing, just consistency. His technique can be all over the place, whether it be from his footwork to his hand placement. And if he can work on that and get that better and better, his frame with his overall natural athleticism give him the potential to be a very good starting left tackle in this league for a while to come, honestly.
Yeah, I did hear him talking earlier today, actually. He said he's up to 305, and that's kind of where he wants to stay. He said he wants to stay at the 305 to 308 range. And last year, I guess he played around 290 for most of the season. So, I mean, it's a little bit of a jump. It's not quite the jump you're hoping for. But I think he's too afraid to lose his athleticism if he gets too much heavier. So I guess we'll see how he does at 305. I still think he has the frame to add a little bit more, get to closer to what you're talking about. He'll never quite be the 330 kind of guy, but yeah, 305, 310, somewhere in there, I think could be a pretty good weight for him too.
This is only going to be his third season playing offensive line. He started as a defensive tackle at Snow Valley Community College before playing a little bit of offensive tackle there and then going to Utah playing 1 year. So about 3.5 years offensive tackle play. So he's still pretty raw with that technique, learning everything, getting the consistencies down a bit. So we should all be expecting a decent step forward this season. And something that can't believe I didn't talk about it as well, but penalties. Garrett Bolles has been a penalty issue. It happened at Utah. It was an issue last year. And even if he doesn't add great strength to his play this year or even consistency with his technique in pass and run sets, if he can improve his discipline and lower that penalty count, it would make a world of difference for the offense and the offensive line.
And but I do think maybe one of the there's two big things I want to talk about for him. One, I do think having Ron Leary next to him is going to be a huge deal.
Yeah. When
you have that veteran, great player next to you, I think that's going to be a huge help where, especially with those twists and turns that defense like to throw in those directions, I think that will be a lot more of a trust factor if you know your guy's going to be in the right spot next to you. Two, I think having a quarterback that knows how to step up in the pocket, that was one of the great plays that I heard from OTAs was the defense pretty much did an all-out blitz. And instead of trying to get to the edge or anything like that, like we've seen with Paxton Lynch, like we saw with Trevor Siemian, or Trevor Siemian would just do the self-sack when he saw a blitz coming at him. Pretty much Case Keenum stepped up in the pocket, knew he was going to take a hit. I mean, obviously OTAs, he's not taking a hit. But he showed that at the Vikings last year he was willing to step up and to make a play. And so he did that, made a great completion down the field to DT, and one of the biggest plays of practice. So that'll be a big help because a lot of his holding penalties were because the quarterback kind of hung out there in the back, and he had a very large arch that he had to try to cover. So I expect, like you said, I expect a lot more just because being year 3 of being an offensive tackle, that should be a big leap for him, especially now that he's kind of used to the NFL speed, and just kind of understanding what they're trying to throw at him. there's a lot of promise with this kid for sure.
Yeah, I was happy with the pick last year. It wasn't as ecstatic as I was with the Chubb pick, but I think that he has as good of a chance to actually take that step forward this year as any player we're talking about, giving everything involved with his journey so far in his career, where he's at, and the changes the Broncos have made on the offensive side of the ball, both coaching and roster-wise. So I have big expectations for Bolles this year. I hope he can stay healthy. I hope he can take that next step forward, because if the Broncos can get solid left tackle play on that rookie contract for the next 3-4 seasons, it's going to make a big difference for this roster, because it's going to help solidify the offensive line. It's going to protect that blind side, which, again, left tackle isn't as important or highly celebrated as it used to be, because these edge rushers are being moved around now and you have interior guys, and it's more important than ever to have 5 guys across the offensive line that are good, rather than the core positions of like left tackle, right guard, and a solid center. But it's going to be big for this team, and I'm really pulling for him. I think if I was going to bet on anybody we've talked about so far as the guy that's most likely to take that step forward this season, it's probably Bolles.
I can't disagree with you at all, man. I do. I expect him to really show why he was a first-round pick this year.
All right, well, we still have a bit to get to, but before we move on, let us tell you about why we need you to become Mile High Huddle VIP subscribers. Mile High Huddle's approach to covering the Broncos isn't just about reporting the news, although we pride ourselves in being able to relay you all the breaking Broncos news as it's happening in real time. What we like to focus on is breaking down the Broncos from an in-depth perspective. From all 22 film reviews, X's and O's, deep dives on player evaluations, and now coming out of the draft, analysis on the 2018 class, we save our best and most in-depth content for our premium members, the VIP subscribers. To become a Mile High Huddle VIP and get access to 100% of our written analysis and the VIP insider forums, just click on the green banner at the top of the website, click the monthly or annual option, and you'll be locked in. From there, you get access to everything we produce, which includes any insider information we pick up along the way, as well as our in-depth content. We work hard to bring you the best Broncos coverage and analysis on the internet. We ask for your support by becoming a VIP subscriber. Pull the trigger, and you have my word, you won't be disappointed. All right, well, we still have 3 guys to get to here, and we're going to have to push it along because Carl and I like to be little chatty Cathys. But the next guy is one of the more intriguing guys this season because he's really as big of a question mark, I guess, besides Chad Kelly, and that is Jake Butt. Jake Butt is a second-year player, although he didn't play at all last year because he injured his ACL at Michigan in their bowl game, the Orange Bowl, I believe. He is only 22 years old, so still just a baby. Sorry for you younger listeners out there. You guys are all children. And he is 6'5", listed 246, although I believe he's up around 250 now. The latest talk is that he's been doing well on the field, moving decently, looks pretty far removed from that ACL injury, and has been playing pretty well as a receiver. However, he's struggling a lot with blocking assignments, both as far as the playbook side of things, who he's supposed to block, when he's supposed to get there, and actually locking up that player when he does engage with them. So that's concerning because the Broncos want to be a run team this season, and the offensive line is already kind of a question mark, let's be real, especially right tackle. Still, although I'm excited for Vild here, but still, question mark. But as a receiver, it's something the Broncos desperately need, and how bad the tight end position has been the past few seasons since, let's be serious, since Julius Thomas left, they really have just not had a number one that does anything for this team. Although, Owen Daniels, you're my boy for scoring that first touchdown against the Patriots in that AFC Championship game.
And the second.
Yeah, and the second. Gosh darn. Owen Daniels, my man. He was a really good quarterback in high school.
Really?
He was like a really highly regarded quarterback, but Wisconsin converted him to tight end. So, man.
Those Badgers.
I know. Gosh darn Badgers. I'm excited. I have season tickets this year, and that Wisconsin-Iowa game is going to be amazing. Hopefully. Hopefully better than last year's Iowa-Wisconsin game. But anyway, yeah, it would be great for Jake Butt to, step up, just step it all. Let's be honest, because that's how pitiful the tight end production's been the last few seasons. Last season, our number one producer of the tight end position didn't even play like half the season on the team. It was A.J. Durden, so he was released. So tight end position's just been a black hole on this roster, and that makes me sad because I love the tight end position. Improved blocking would be big for him for the next step, obviously, and just being out there on the field. He's going to offer much as a yard-after-catch guy. That's not really totally his game, but being a consistently open guy, move the chains, and be a receiving threat for the Broncos over the middle of the field and on third downs and in zones, find the soft spot in zones, would be, it'd be so huge for Case Keenum and the Broncos, especially considering how much Case Keenum loved to use Kyle Rudolph in the red zone and on third downs last season.
I think there's maybe no player with more hope from Broncos country than that of Jake Butt, but maybe no player that has more pressure to try to live up to that kind of hype when he hasn't even stepped on the field. I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw a tight end hyped up this much that was a 5th-round pick. Now, given it was big, the reason he dropped that far was because of his injury, but still, I mean, there's a lot of expectations of what Jake Butt's going to bring to the Broncos. And I hope he's ready for that kind of pressure to be brought upon him. Because like you said, that the tight end room has just been a nightmare. Every year you sit there and you hope that Virgil Green is going to emerge into something. And he gets hyped up of, oh, this is the year that he finally breaks out. And then he has like 10 catches for the year. And and then spends half of it on the IR or injured list or things like that. But I really hope Jake Butt can show something, because like you said, when you have that tight end, it is such a great matchup nightmare. And I would love to see the Broncos be on the giving side of that instead of the receiving end of that, because it's been a nightmare trying to cover tight ends that are actually good. And Jake Butt, like you said, as a receiver, I think my expectations are just my thoughts of what this year is going to be for him. I think he's going to be a good receiving tight end. I really do. I've heard a lot of good things so far, and I saw a lot of good things on his tape when he was there at Michigan. But like you said, if taking that next step, it's going to have to be that he's going to have to be a 3-down tight end, a guy that you can trust to stay on the field to block, a guy that you can trust to know exactly where he's supposed to be, and a guy that just wants to do everything, because tight end is one of the hardest positions, I think, on the football field.
You have to run the routes and know the playbook like a receiver, have hands like a receiver, and then know the exact same thing of the offensive line.
Right, exactly. I mean, you're not going to ask your receivers to know how to sit there and block on the offensive line for a goal line kind of run right up the middle. But you're going to need your tight end to know that. You're going to need them, and they might have to know multiple positions. They might be that slot receiver option. They might be that H-back option, because we don't know Andy Janovich if they're going to keep him on the team this year or not. So maybe they're going to have to play some fullback. There's just so much that's going to be asked of them. And can we expect a guy that hasn't played a single snap in the NFL to really rise up and meet those expectations that are being set for him right now?
Yeah, I agree. The biggest thing is just getting out there and getting his feet wet, so to speak. He's got to go out there and play, and I'm sure he's more confident with that knee day by day, because it's been 18 months now, and they took it slowly last year with him, which I'm happy about. There was no real reason to rush him, all things considered. So expectations this year, just getting your feet wet. I think he's going to play more like a tight end 2 than a tight end 1 this year. What does that mean for the team going forward? Not really sure. I'm thinking he'll probably play like tight end 1 snaps, but his production won't be there in that regard. But again, this is essentially his rookie season. So not going to be totally disappointed by that. And if he can go out there and just be a viable third down option, be consistent with his hands, move the chain some, not get blown up in the blocking game, and improve as a blocker, that's a big thing. And be a red zone weapon for this team, I would consider this season a step forward and a success for him as a player.
What would be a realistic stat line for him for you?
I would say something like 35 to 40 receptions, 400 to 450 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns probably is realistic. That's like not putting too high of expectations on it, but also not saying that he's not going to contribute at all.
Yeah, last year, Virgil Green was the leading receiver for the Broncos at the tight end position, and he had 14 catches for 191 yards and 1 touchdown. No, that's terrible. Next is Hireman at 9 catches for 142 yards and 2 touchdowns. So it's definitely been, like you said, a black hole for the Broncos so far. And if you can get that 40 to 45 receptions out of the tight end position from one player, about 450, 500 yards, And you would hope maybe 4 or 5 touchdowns just because guys are going to be focusing on DT and Sanders so much. I think he's going to have some nice matchups in the red zone that maybe the Broncos can really take advantage of. That would be huge for this Bronco offense to really take that next step.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, we've been talking about the offensive side of the football a lot, so we got to move it on here. And we're going to switch it to the defensive side. Bradley Roby, $8.5 million fifth-year option this year, 26 years old, and 5'11", 192 pounds. He's missed some OTAs this year because of sickness, but has reportedly been playing pretty well and filling in for Talib. Carl and I kind of gave Carl a hard time on Twitter the other day, but he's not going to replace Talib. It's impossible to replace Talib, but he's going to fill in that spot, and I think he's going to do pretty well. But the big thing, again, he said it's the theme of the podcast, consistency. Bradley Roby is maddening because sometimes he can look like one of the best cornerbacks in the league. His ability to recover, his ability to change direction, click and close is great. I mean, that Miami game this year was amazing. But then you see him the next week, and he just, I don't know if it's one play where he takes his head's in the clouds or whatever, but he'll give up 2 or 3 big plays that are obviously on him. Sometimes Darian Stewart didn't really help him last year. But that's besides the point. I would also like to see him make more plays on the ball. Again, talking about Talib, we're going to miss him, but the big thing that I would love to see Roby do this year is, create some more turnovers. Turnovers are big, especially with how much the offense has struggled this year. So seeing Bradley Roby kind of kick up that turnover ability would be big. And then Bradley Roby came into the league. He's a press man corner. That's what he is. That's what he's best at. But in order to mix up coverages, it'd be nice to see him play a little bit more consistently with his off-ball technique, both in man and zone coverage.
For me, I think to really take that next step for him, and this is why I think he is so inconsistent sometimes, is I don't think he puts in the this is me just making some assumptions here. But when I hear legendary things of Chris Harris and Aqib Talib putting in the work in the film room, that they know that offense backwards and forwards and just know exactly what's coming at them. I mean, that's why Chris Harris is Chris Harris. That's why he's so good in the slot, is he can read a player's feet. He can understand what they're trying to do against him, and he just goes and makes plays. Talib, again, he can read how an offense is setting up, and he can make those. That's why he can be aggressive. That's why he can make those kind of guesses at times, because he has a pretty good idea what an offense is trying to do against him. And so I really think if Roby really wants to take that next step, it's just attaching himself to Chris Harris. When Chris Harris is in the film room, he's in the film room. When Chris Harris is working on the jugs machine or doing whatever, doing cone drills or whatever it may take, Bradley Roby is right there. I mean, there's nobody better to learn from than I think Chris Harris, because he is one of those guys that's just, I think he's worked his tail off to get where he is. There's other guys in the league that are much more physically gifted. Bradley Roby is a great example. He is more physically gifted than Chris Harris. But because Chris Harris is so smart on the field, Harris is a much better cornerback. So that's what I would love to see, is just those two just talking like crazy when they're at training camp. And just because I do think Talib and Harris had just this connection where they could kind of look across the field and say, hey, this is what's happening. This is what we're doing. And it just made for a legendary duo for sure.
Absolutely. And Talib's gone. Thank you, Talib, for your time, but it's time for the no-fly zone to evolve. And Roby, if he takes the next step this year, it's a double-edged sword, because it's better for the Broncos, but then they're going to have to open up that checkbook, because he's going to hit the market, and you can't let him walk after a great season. You need that cornerback. You need 3 good cornerbacks to run the scheme the Broncos want to run. So it's really a double-edged sword. Obviously, you want him to do well, but understand the long-term cap ramifications of if he does actually take that next step this year, what it means for the Broncos. And hopefully, if he does take that next step this year and gets paid, he can maintain that level and maybe even take another step after that, because he has talent to be a top 10 cornerback in this league, a true number 1 cornerback. But again, consistency, and I think ball production would be a big thing for him going forward, that if he can do that, the sky's the limit. Yeah, I agree, but this season's definitely the biggest one for him. But a new Bronco that has to take a step forward this season, the last guy on our list here, since we're running long,
Sua Cravens, recently traded from the Washington Redskins. Just 22 years old, so still a little bit of a baby as well. 6'1", 226 pounds, so almost that smaller linebacker type in that weight. And $650,000 cap this year with 3 years remaining. So that's actually a good bit of news for the Broncos. He didn't play last year, so that actually didn't count. So he actually is considered a second-year player instead of a third-year player. So good for the Broncos. They have another year of cheap, cost-controlled player going forward. And Broncos seem very excited about him. I think Joe Woods is very excited about him. Broncos missed TJ Ward's ability last season. Let me say that TJ Ward, I was not upset about, at least from a roster building standpoint, I was not upset that he was gone. And that turned out to be a pretty good viewpoint because he did diddly for the Tampa Bay Bucks because his play has regressed tremendously. But the Broncos missed that dime backer type, a safety that can come down, provide a physical presence in the box, and be almost like a linebacker. Can play against tight ends, can play against running backs, plays hook zones close to the line of scrimmage, and that's exactly what Cravens is. But to take that next step, obviously, number one, he's got to show that he's committed to the game. And if he's not committed to the game, then he won't be in the league for long. He's saying all the right things. He's a funny dude. His Twitter, he's one of my favorite Twitter followers on the Broncos right now. He's posting all the time. Did you see the one the other day where somebody came into his apartment while he was on the toilet?
Yeah, I saw that. Jeez.
Yeah, and he's also a big Fortnite fan as well. So
yeah,
great. But sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, when I was in college, I had that happen at like 3 a.m. I wasn't on the toilet, but I was in bed, and you hear the front door open, and walked out, and there's this guy getting food out of our fridge.
Oh.
And he goes, "What are you guys doing here?" We're like, "We live here," and he's like, "Oh, this isn't my apartment."
Nope. But go ahead.
Yeah,
help yourself.
Right.
Bagel bites can eat themselves.
So I understand that making sure you lock that front door.
I've been on the other end where I've walked into the wrong apartment, completely sober. So it just happens. Not paying attention. Get off the flight of stairs one flight too early, walking the autopilot, open the door. It's like, whose apartment is this? Oh no, I'm on the wrong floor. So happened more than once. I hate to say that.
Oh,
but yeah, Sua Cravens. Yeah, I know. I'm kind of a blonde sometimes. He had flashes his rookie year, but he's going to need to do more. He's need to play more often. He actually did not play as much as one would think. His snap count was pretty limited for a second round pick. Granted, we have DeMarcus Walker on that same spectrum, so how can you say limited? But he's going to have to be more physical, line of scrimmage, showing that he can play man coverage, zone coverage, stay healthy, and stay grinding. But he seems committed. He seems excited for playing the Broncos, and I'm waiting to see. I'm actually pretty darn excited to have him on the Broncos this season.
It was a risk worth taking.
Absolutely.
It was a low risk, high reward move by the Broncos. That's what I love. But like I said, you got to see how he's going to handle, especially when he takes those first bumps and bruises. He's saying all the right things right now, but it's easy to be happy when you're healthy. Can you still be happy with the game when, oh man, everything hurts?
Or when you come in Tuesday or Wednesday after getting just absolutely embarrassed the week before, or a big play that was definitely your fault, and still coming in and grinding and working even though everything hurts, you're tired, and it's your fault.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's been the big question is how can he mentally handle this game? I mean, everybody's going to be asking the question, why did you quit? Why did you retire there for a second? And I know we can go to not trusting the organization. We can go to his concussions, all that kind of stuff. But it's still a matter of there's been a lot of players that have gotten all those things and still continue to play. I think of Luke Kuechly. I said it right. He how many concussions has he had? But he still goes out there and continues to play. And I'm not saying I understand if players quit because of concussions, that's you're watching out for your health. I understand that's fine. I have no problem with that. But it's still always going to be that question of can you go out there year in, year out, week in, week out, day in, day out, and continue to grind because it's a long season.
Yeah. And how much longer do you have and how close are you to that last hit?
Right, exactly. And so I'm excited when they get the pads on just to hear what's going on with him. If he starts missing practices because of bumps and bruises like he did at Washington, then I'm going to start questioning, all right, maybe he's not quite back like he was hoping. Maybe he all of a sudden got feeling good and missed a little bit of that paycheck. I don't know. I'm not trying to say what kind of person he is or anything like that. I'm just saying there's just a lot of questions around this guy. That's why Washington was willing, after one season and a year of retirement, to get rid of him for pretty much pennies on the dollar.
Yeah. That said, definitely worth the risk for the Broncos. And if he can fill that TJ Ward linebacker role for this team, especially with the Broncos not having the solid 3 cornerback looks that they've had in the past, maybe transitioning to more 3 safety looks where Simmons can come down and play some slot if need be. So it'll be interesting. I'm excited about it, and I think that he's going to be a good player for the Broncos this season, and already developing. Him and Justin Simmons going to be. I'm calling it now. I think they're going to be one of the better safety duos in the league going forward. That's my bold prediction.
Oh, man. Look at you go.
I love Simmons, though. I don't think you'll find many bigger Simmons fans than me. Even before he was drafted, I was a big Simmons fan. And the Broncos took him. That was my guy. I think he's probably the budding young star on the defense right now. So I think Cravens will be good, but it's 60% because of Simmons. But I think Cravens is going to be great, too, for the Broncos.
All right. Well, it's hard to argue, at least, that he's going to bring more to the team than what they had last year. I mean, Will Parks tried to play that role, and he was one of the worst Bronco players in coverage last year.
Garbage. That game against Miami, gosh, that was horrible.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, he was getting burned. The double moves by the tight ends or running backs against him they were golden. They worked all the time, and he actually should have given up a couple more touchdowns. Receivers dropped balls for him that made him look a little bit better than what he really was. So, again, I can't see Sua Cravens being as bad in coverage as Will Parks was last year. So that's a good thing. And I think he helps out in the pass rush department. That was one of his biggest strengths when he was at Washington or USC. The guy can get after the quarterback. So I'm excited to see the blitz packages that they come up with. I'm excited to see how they use Sua Cravens, because that'll be a big part of this. Is that they never had, over the last couple of years, the versatility that they have in players this year on defense. Guys like Sua Cravens, Bradley Roby, Chris Harris both being able to play slot. You got safeties that are a little bit interchangeable in Darian Stewart and Justin Simmons. Defensive line-wise, I mean, there's actually some depth there this year. Some guys that are made for getting after the quarterback, some guys that are made for getting after the running back. You got pass rushers that you can move around. Even off-ball linebacker, there's a little bit more promise in the depth. And so I like what they're doing with the defense. I like what they can do and what they can put on the field on any given play. And Sua Cravens is a big part of that equation to allow guys just to move around and do some unique things that we haven't seen in the past. And it's just a matter of, can Joe Woods be a good enough defensive coordinator to use the pieces right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, can I wrap this up because we're getting long?
Yep, go ahead.
All right, well, that's going to wrap up this week's episode of Building the Broncos. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler HH and myself at Kendell and HH. Also, make sure you head on over to milehighhuddle.com, a new affiliate of 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports Digital, to find ours and our co-writers' articles not just related to the draft, but all things that pertain to your Denver Broncos. Make sure you head on over to iTunes as well and leave us a 5-star rating and a comment. Your support can help us continue to bring you our Denver Bronco deep dives. We aren't just here to bring you news, but an in-depth analysis each week from team building, game planning, and 365 days of covering the Denver Broncos. You can follow Building the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to us on the Huddle Up podcast on iTunes and for Android users, Stitcher, as well as check us out on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at Huddle Up Pod. Again, please be sure to subscribe and rate us and reach out to us as we love interacting with you fellow Bronco fans. For Carl Dumler, I'm Nick Kendell wrapping up another episode of Building the Broncos. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next week. Go Broncos.
Mile High Huddle.